SZA has been one of the hottest artists in the R&B and pop scene for years now. Her moody, toxic, and emotional songs have had people in a chokehold ever since her legendary 2017 album, Control. And although most fans praise SZA for her amazing vocals, there's one thing that acts as the foundation for all those amazing records: the genius production behind her songs. So today we're going to be taking a deep dive into all the genius production techniques used in SZA's best beats and make our own beat inspired by some of her most iconic records. We've got a ton to unpack, and there's so many little techniques in here that you can apply and use in your beats. So sit back and get ready to go into the moody and soulful world of SZA's production. When I think of SZA's music, a few things come to mind. First, a kind of pop R&B hybrid kind of feeling. Not too pop where it's corny and generic feeling, but also not so R&B that it can't go mainstream. Second, SZA's music often has a very organic and interesting texture to it. And finally, some of the key instruments that I think of are synths and guitars. And I'll get into adding interesting synths later on in this video, but guitars especially are used in a bunch of SZA's best records. Those are just a few. She has countless records that are carried by smooth guitar progressions. There's just certain instruments that VSTs don't cut it for. Guitar is definitely one of those. Also, one reason I think that SZA's music has that organic, interesting texture is because a lot of the instrumentation is live and real instruments. So I grabbed my nylon acoustic guitar that I have in my studio and came up with a plan to start our beat. I wanted to take the chords from one song, but play it with the rhythm and kind of playing style of a different SZA song, which is a great technique that you can use to emulate the feeling of a song you like without it being a straight rip-off and copy of that song. For example, I love the chord progression on Snooze. So as you saw and as you heard with Snooze, progression is a D minor 7 chord to an E minor 7 chord, which is essentially just this chord put up 2 notes. 1, 2, and then it goes up to an F major 7 chord, which all you would need to do is copy this over 1, pitch it up 1 note, and then grab this middle note and this top note and pitch those 2 notes up 1 more time, and you get this progression. Which is a super common chord progression in R&B. Anyways, now that I knew what chords I wanted to use, I went and listened to some other SZA songs to kind of get some inspiration for how I wanted to play them. And one of the cooler ideas I came up with was to play the chords in 3/4 time instead of the standard 4/4 time. And if that sounded like a foreign language to you, let me explain it real quick. In most modern music, songs use the 4/4 time signature, which essentially just means that there are 4 beats for every bar, like this. And in 3/4 time, there's only 3 beats per each bar, which gives off a more kind of swingy, slow dance waltz kind of vibe, like this. And 3/4 is actually used a lot in classical music, but it's also used a lot in R&B. It gives a super cool, swingy kind of bounce, and one of my favorite SZA songs, Nobody Gets Me, is actually in 3/4 time. And although this song isn't super R&B feeling, if you listen along with a metronome, you can tell that it's in 3/4. So I thought combining that snooze chord progression with that 3/4 kind of bounce would be a sick idea. And since I'm so used to working in 4/4 time, to kind of help me hear that bounce, I dragged in a 3/4 drum loop that I had made for my upcoming drum mastery kit just to record on. I find that using drum breaks or drum loops is a lot more inspiring to record live instruments on, or even playing in MIDI compared to just a metronome. It just helps you find different pockets of grooves. And then finally, I took a little bit more inspiration from Love Language, where you can hear this kind of stop and go playing. So, playing the chords from Snooze with both of those other songs in mind, I came up with this. That sounds cool, but the recording sounds a little bit rough around the edges right now. So to clean that up a little bit, I added some reverb, an EQ, the Clef Grand Bruce Fee, which is a denoiser. So essentially it's just getting rid of the room noise. And then I added Decimort 2 to filter it out a little bit and also add a little bit more texture. And with all that, you get this. Now, I like that, but I wanted to add some more variation to the guitar. So I kept listening to some more references, and I kept hearing these super smooth, finger-picked, arpeggiated kind of guitar loops, which if you don't know what that means, it's essentially where you play the chords like this, instead of playing it all at once like this. Take a listen.
Running away from where I'm from.
So I recorded that same chord progression with that kind of playing for a B section, and then I pitched the audio up a whole octave, which is a great trick that you can do to get that really warped, interesting kind of texture to your stuff. Now, we're not done with the guitar yet. Another song that I love the guitar on is Good Days. I love that fast, reverbed out, ambient guitar arp kind of sound, but I know myself and I am not a good enough player to play that on guitar. So instead of playing a brand new layer, I took that last finger picking melody that we just played and I sped it up twice as fast and chopped it up a little bit to get this. But clearly, this doesn't have that texture and that ambient vibe that Good Days have, so let me show you how I processed it. So the first thing I wanted to do to really make this feel ambient was obviously add a bunch of reverb, so I added Valhalla for that. And already that feels a lot better. Then I wanted to take out some body. I didn't want this to compete with the other main guitar sounds. I wanted this to just be like a high texture. So I took out some of the mid end and boosted the high end to give it some more clarity there. Put that denoiser again. And this time I made it very harsh so that it's a more gentle tone than the main guitars. It's not cutting through as much. Then I added some delay using my upcoming plugin. A ring shifter, it's moving it around. Then I added on some halftime, but I turned the mix down just to kind of thicken it up a little bit. Then I added some distortion in chorus with my plugin. Another EQ. This time I'm really drastically pushing the highs up. I want it to feel like a super high-end texture. Then I add some compression to bring the volume out, a filter with Decimar 2 to get rid of some of the high-end sharpness after I added that compressor, and then finally some subtle detune with rabbit tape. And before and after, you get this. Finally, to add a little bit more variation to that main guitar, I went back to Love Language and I loved that delay that you can hear hitting with the guitar slaps. So I wanted to do something similar, but instead of just slapping a delay on the whole entire track, I did some heavy automation so it sounds a little bit different. So if I add a delay normally on here, you can hear that every single note is going to be delayed. But when you listen to Love Language, really only the slaps are being delayed. So what I did here is I essentially automated the mix to 0 on these first 2 notes. And then as soon as this big hit comes in, then the delay comes in. As soon as the next chord starts, the delay stops, and so on and so forth throughout the whole pattern like this. Doing this is essentially emulating using a real delay pedal, because I'm willing to bet that the guitarist who played in the guitar on that song with their foot as they were playing the guitar just turned the delay pedal on and off as they wanted it to get that effect only on certain parts. Adding little touches like this can make the music so much more interesting without doing too much and making it too overdone, but just adding subtle little cool ear candy elements like that. Anyways, now that we have the main guitar progression down for this beat and a few different sections for B sections and all that, it's time to move on to the next instrument. The bass. And SZA often uses a live bass in her songs.
Stuck in this paradigm, don't believe in paradise. I'm still a fan even though it's salty.
So I grabbed my live bass, which fun fact is actually the same exact bass that I played on the song that I produced for SZA, Beautiful with Future and DJ Khaled.
I took a flight for the paddock. You said, babe, you're so dramatic, I guess.
I figured since I literally used this bass on a SZA record, I would be stupid not to include it in this video. So I took some inspiration from the bass line that's played on Cry Baby, which is another song that's in 3/4, I think. And I played this in following the root notes of our progression. One thing I did to the bass line to really enhance that R&B and soul kind of feeling was add an out of key note. So as you can see right here, we have 3 notes going up into each other like that, and that normally sounds very weird and out of key, but specifically in R&B music, if you use it right, it can act as a cool kind of tension and release. So listen to this bass line without that note right there. Right? It works, but adding in that little extra out of key walk up just really elevates that soulful kind of feeling. Now, I like that bass line, but I had a little bit of a problem. On a lot of SZA's songs, there's no 808 at all. It's just a nice, thick, juicy bass. And right now, the bass didn't really feel full and thick like I wanted it to. So to fix that, I actually layered 3 basses on top of each other. Let me explain. First off, I had that live bass that I played, and I really wanted to keep that texture and make it sound like I used a live bass for the track, but I wanted to have that deep and full sound that a synth bass has. So I started off by copying the bass line onto a basic sine wave and playing it in a very, very low octave, so all that you can really hear is super low sub frequencies. And then I recorded that same exact pattern on a synth bass using my Poly D. And once I layered all those together, I EQ'd out some of the really low end frequencies on the live bass and the synth bass to make room for that sine wave, and EQ'd a little bit more just to make sure that each bass had its own purpose and frequency range that it could stand out in. Now that's sounding pretty good. And to prove how important live instruments are, take a listen to all the exact same patterns playing, but with all VSTs instead of those live instruments we were using. You can see how much more life the idea has when it's played on real instruments. And I think that's one big thing that a lot of producers are missing in their music today, and why a lot of music sounds the exact same is because everyone's using the same cheap VST sound. Problem is, not everyone can play instruments, and not everyone has thousands of dollars to invest in a whole studio full of them. So to help you all out, I'm gonna give you guys 50% off all of my kits on my store for the first 100 people who use the code SZA at checkout. I've got countless kits like Melody Mastery and Vintage Essentials where I spent tens of thousands of dollars working with session musicians, buying analog synths, and all this stuff to make real live instrument recordings, vocals, all that good stuff. So if you feel like you're missing that interesting organic texture to your melodies, definitely click that first link in the description and use the code SZA. Again, first 100 people will be able to get that 50% off. So if you want to add that live instrument sound to your production, click that link. Anyways, next up, I just wanted to add a few more sounds before I got in and added synths, which is another key part of SZA's production. So let's get into that. First off, if you listen to BMF, you can hear this little sliding electric guitar accent kind of sound. So I grabbed my electric guitar and added that kind of melody onto our idea and got this. Now, this is sounding good, but like I said, an essential part to SZA's sound is texture. And one sound that I heard in some SZA songs is some kind of weird ambient laser effect. I love these kind of weird synth laser sprinkle kind of effects. So I grabbed 2 one-shots that I actually made using my synths from the Melody Mastery kit, as well as a vinyl texture to just kind of add some more feeling and vibe to the melody. Simple things, but those 1% improvements really do add up to a better end result. Anyways, now it's time to move on to the synths. Synths are definitely a big part of SZA's production, especially on her Control album. You can hear a ton of super interesting synths that are sprinkled throughout the album, with one of my favorite examples being the super ear-grabbing synth run that you can hear on anything. I love this kind of sound, and I use these kind of synth run, synth arps all the time because they're so good at adding that interesting ear candy sound that SZA loves in her music. And there's one super easy technique that I abuse to get that sound in just a few seconds. If you were to try to click in a run like that on MIDI, you'd be in for a painful experience. So instead, the easiest thing you can do is just slide your hands across the keyboard. Let me explain. Essentially, what you want to do is grab any basic synth lead sound like this. Then you want to throw a super heavy analog delay on it. I'm using my plugin right here. And then you just want to slide your hand across all of the black keys like this. Just like that. The reason this works though is because all of these black keys are in what's called the pentatonic scale when you're playing in E flat minor or D sharp minor. So essentially what I do is I just play like this. Even if my project isn't in that key, and then I just transpose the audio file later to match the key of the beat I'm working on. So I used that technique and recorded myself sliding my hand across the poly D with a super simple lead sound that I made, and after drowning it in some analog delay, I got this. Next up, I wanted to add some lush synth chords, similar to the simple R&B sine chords that you can hear on Broken Clocks. I like how the pad on that song feels like a little bit warped, a little unstable, just a bit more textured than a bare sine wave. So I found this pad one shot using a sine wave from my melody mastery kit that I actually processed through my chroma console guitar pedal to get that detuned, unstable kind of vibe. And I played the same chords that we played on the guitar using that one shot to get this. Next up, I wanted a glittery textural sound, kind of like the one that you can hear in this song. I feel like those high sprinkle glittery kind of notes just add a bunch of feeling into the record. To replicate that vibe, I grabbed this kind of arpeggiated synth one shot that I made from my melody mastery kit, which by itself sounds super harsh and in your face. So we're gonna have to do some processing. The first thing I did was drag the attack way over so that it plays super slow and kind of swells into it. Then I added in a heavy reverb, Decimort 2 filtering out a ton of the high end to make it less harsh and more ambient. Also a heavy analog delay for my upcoming plugin. Then I copied the chord MIDI from the last sound and you get this. Finally, I layered in one more synth pad sound from Omnisphere that again has that kind of unstable synth sound, kind of similar to the chords that you can hear on Love Galore. Why you bother me when you know you don't want me? Why you bother me? So I copied those chords again, and with all three of those synths together, you get this. I love the texture and the feeling on those, but anyways, I wanted to add a few more melodic elements before we got into the drums. I added one more synth accent sound to kind of act as a transition going between those high energy and more chill parts. And finally, I took some inspiration from Kill Bill and Love Galore again, where you can hear that unstable, detuned synth kind of sound that I keep talking about. I just love it. No, you don't want me. Why you bother me when you know you gotta want? I feel like these detuned synths just give off that nostalgic vibe that a lot of SZA's music has. So I grabbed this basic synth preset from my Melody Mastery Bank, which I actually made using the Arturia Jupiter 8 emulation, which is a great synth that you can use for these nostalgic, bright, super analog kind of synth sounds that you can hear SZA using. Anyways, once I had that sound, I played in a super simple top line melody that I only have come in on the last hook of the beat to make sure it has impact. You can create the illusion that a sound is way cooler than it is or way more impactful than it really is just by using it sparsely. Once I had that, it was time to finish it up with the drums. And after listening to a lot of SZA's music the last few days, one thing I noticed is she used a lot of live drum breaks in her music. I might do minus, not the best idea. Deserve pussy, meaning it's more you see. But she also often uses more trappy, modern kind of sounds in her drums as well. You stay on mine, I can't regret no time spent. Chat, feel like that nigga don't hit me back. Chat, you and you know better, know you know better, know you. So for these drums, I'm gonna try to combine both of these feelings into one. Start off, I wanted that live organic groove to kind of set the foundation for the beat. So I found this live cymbal hi-hat loop. I feel like this added that human live kind of texture that she has in a lot of the drums in her music. So for the rest of it, I wanted to add some more modern sounds. I started with a kick and a more trappy sounding snare. Then to add something a little interesting, I grabbed this snare that has a huge delay on it and layered it in on every fourth snare in the pattern. Next up, for a little B section where the drums chill out a little bit, I changed the snare out for a snap to give more of that smooth R&B kind of feeling, which you can hear SZA using in these songs.
Wanting to be thick, now I wanna be thin. Her Pilates is in.
Finally, I played in some hi-hats, and the key here is to actually play them in live instead of just clicking them in. It gives it a way more human groove and feeling, because if you're playing it in live, you're probably not playing everything perfectly in time and perfectly at the same velocity. And that kind of human swing and groove is essential to some good 3/4 R&B drums. Anyways, this is what I came up with. And once I had that, the whole beat was finished. And I'm gonna play it all the way through in a second, but if you enjoyed this video so far, hit that subscribe button so I can keep making more videos like this. And let me know in the comments down below what your favorite song by SZA is. All right, now let's hear the finished product. Quick reminder, if you want 50% off all of my sound kits, which I use for almost every sound in this beat, the first 100 people to use the code SZA will be able to get that half off deal. So click that first link in the description if you're interested in that. But anyways, thank you for watching. Peace.